Thought Media Network proudly presents a weekly exploration of various spiritual practices with renowned spiritual authors, coaches, teachers, and Dr. Tracy Brown, RScP.
And now, here's Tracy.
Hey everybody, how you doing? It is Tuesday. It is noon Central Time-ish. Not Central Time, noon Mountain Time. I'm in Colorado, not Texas. And I am so glad to welcome you to Poetry, Prayer, and Practice. If this happens to be your first time with the show, the show is really what the title says. We dive into poetry and how that can be for us a spiritual practice, either writing it or reading it. We talk a lot about prayer and the role of prayer in our lives. And we then spread out and touch all the other spiritual practices that aren't so commonly referred to, or things that you're doing that are spiritual practice and you haven't even thought about it as a spiritual practice. This week, I'm really happy to share with you a conversation that I know is going to be fabulous, or as my guest would say, that it's going to be and guaranteed to be fabulicious. And we're just going to have some fun. Oh, that also reminds me to share again, if this is your first time, these conversations are not scripted. They are not outlined in advance. So you really, if it feels like you're eavesdropping on a private conversation between two people who are just jamming or vibing on spirituality, that's by design, because that's exactly what is about to happen. My guest today is Reverend D. Jacquelyn Edwards. And D. Jacquelyn Edwards is someone I go to when I need someone to pray for me. So we might talk a little bit about prayer or spiritual mind treatment, and we might not. I don't know. Three other things about D. Jacquelyn. She's based in the Oakland, California area. And she is the founder of Platinum Butterly Ministries, which I know we're going to talk about. So we'll let her tell you how she came up with that name and what it means. And the third thing I'll share about D. Jacquelyn is she is one of the people within Centers for Spiritual Living who has developed a well-earned reputation as a leader and team player, because I think she has volunteered for at least, and I'm being conservative here, at least 12 different committees, advisory boards, and other groups. And so she is one of the people who I also look at as a mental equivalent or role model for how to serve an organization using the spiritual practices and principles that we are committed to. So if you don't want me to spend the next 30 minutes telling you things I know about D. Jacquelyn Edwards, I will bring her on. So, hey, D. Jacquelyn.
Hey, Dr. Tracy Brown. How are you? How are you?
It's a good day.
It
So
is
I
a good
just shared three things, well, and a bonus thing about things I know about you. But what else do you want people to know about who you are and frame up our conversation today?
Wow. What else? I think the main thing is that I'm on a journey, that I'm clear that I am on a journey. Where I am in this particular moment is really wanting to both deepen my understanding of where we are. And I think I've got a pretty good sense of that, but really expand my toolbox in terms of how to take this thing called ministry, how to use this thing called ministry. And I'm not specifically attaching ministry to being a minister either. So nobody is excluded, exempted, none of that. There's no opportunity to not be involved. The only opportunity is to figure out how and what and how to do it without pissing people off. When you said it was conversation, then I just, kind of landed there. I could say that more formally, but right now that's what's up, and that's really important. And I haven't always been there, because there was a time when I sort of, how can I say this delicately, was a little bit judgy, about a lot of things, which didn't really work. It didn't serve. It did not serve my mission, vision of pollinating the spiritual nature of individuals, groups, and organizations. It rallied people who already thought like I think and believe what I believe, but that's not what time it is completely. Yes, I'm absolutely about being in safe spaces for myself, but I'm also very interested in bridging some gaps, because, and then I'm going to be quiet, but because I'm coming almost hourly, but definitely daily, to believe that there is so much to feel. Because of course I've always had the intellectual belief that we have more in common than we do differences, and that our differences serve to highlight and fertilize and glorify the world that we live in. I'm good at that. And it has dropped down into my heart space. I've been having some conversations with some people that I either don't necessarily have conversations with, or I don't have authentic conversations with, which is, we know from code switching and other places those are different things. So
Well, there are two things that you said that really jumped out at me. And I think many of us have been, and some still are, in that place where, when you were talking about like being in judgment, and we do have to make judgments. I mean, we're navigating human condition, but trying to lead from that place where there's either, if you believe like I believe and think like I think, then we're good. And if not, then I have to attack you. I have to correct you. I have to make you wrong so I can be right. And that is a place that some people get stuck, or that is a place where some people stay. And it's hard to be in alignment with spiritual principle and always live there. It's like, yes, it's a paradox. You're moving,
yes,
right? You're moving forward for change. You're the seed and the catalyst for change. And yes, people are going to be pissed off sometimes. But is it deliberate? Like, am I intentionally getting people riled up so I can lead them to a new place? Or am I getting them riled up and leaving them feeling hurt, stuck, and stubbornly staying where they are?
Yeah.
So that was one thing. And I just happened to have this card within arm's reach because I picked it up last week, and it's on the desk next to my desk. And it has a picture of the notorious RBG.
Ah.
And it says, fight for the things that you care about, but do it in a way that will lead others to join you.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
It's a quote from her. And I'm like, oh, I bought the card not to send to anyone. I bought the card to put it where I can see it when I'm in meetings and doing webinars about inclusion, to remind me that there are times to fight and there are times to be abrasive on purpose.
Yes, conscious co-creation, conscious co-creation. And I have a little asterisk, and that is that I'm not ignoring or denying the existence of willful ignorance or cognitive dissonance or any of that. I'm not saying that. In fact, those things give me, I'm going to say, and I'm also going to say us, an opportunity. And by us, I mean there's a global us, there's a global pulsing going on right now of understanding what's up, and deeply and passionately being involved in co-creating our next greater yet to be. So I believe that with all my heart, that regardless of what the thing reports, the media reports, and there's so much good going on that just does not get reported, which is a whole another area of things to do, of work to do. New Thought Media is about that work. And I'm grateful for all those entities like New Thought Media. And circling back, it's important for people to, as my mother would say, and I'm sure my grandparents too, show you who they are. That's important, because then once you know, then you know how to proceed. Then you're clear. It's not the fuzzy wuzzy. I think, the other day it's kind of sounded like, it's not. Which again comes back to the only way you get to that point of clarity is by having the interaction in the conversation.
Absolutely.
And I think that's vital right now. And so in that vein, I'm grateful for what I'm debating on whether I want to call myself an itinerant preacher, because I go to a lot of different communities. I get to speak at different communities that have different perspectives on and in the world. And I'm both grateful for the opportunity to taste and see, to touch these different communities. And in the process, I'm able to craft, because I think that's some of the work, to craft how I want to show up in the space and how I want to, am called to, am guided to, am led to from spiritual practices. That's the undergirding thing of all of it, is the spiritual practices. What is spirit telling me to do? What am I being directed to do? And that direction comes from interaction, as well as it comes from that tapping on that ancestral realm, which is not a term that I use very often, and I'm a little teeny tiny bit, but not really, surprised at it coming out of my mouth right now. And my not really is because I'm coming to understand, and I'm using the word understand versus believe, that we are indeed surrounded by the ancestors 24/7, 365, that there is a tap in, and the the way and ways in which we either say yes or go, wait, what? To that can sometimes, it can be silly. It can be downright silly. It can be just run through with, just infused with gratitude. Like there are times when I have to say thank you, Mom. Just thank you. Just thank you. Because I know that their thing that just did what it did right in front of my face, I know that was not me. And I know that there was a power and a presence. And in our global, we call it a power and a presence for good. Ernest Holmes says, and you can use it. And as I personally, and we, little ad here, Dr. Will Coleman teaches a class at Holmes Institute, which you too can take, on ancient African religions. As we understand those African roots and incorporate them more and more into who we are and how we are, we start to understand some other things. We start to understand that cellular connection. We start to understand what the science is saying is they're approaching it from the aspect of talking about trauma, that trauma exists at a cellular level across and through generations. And what I'm also knowing is that love exists at a cellular level across and through generations. And that love, that energetic, if you will, is palpable, that we can feel it and we can sense it, that we can hear it, that we can taste it. As Tracy alluded to earlier, I tend to add licious on to the end of words. And somebody said to me in just such a arrogant, call it what it was, kind of a way, now, do you know that the suffix licious means taste? To which, what could I say but yes, yes. And so when I say that God is awesome, licious, I mean that the awe of God tastes good on my palate, on the palate that is my tongue, as well as the palate that is my whole self, that is my whole life, that is my whole way of being, that there is a liciousness in it, that there's a tastiness in it that really exists all around us if we, not even if, but as we taste and see. Taste and see. You know, the rest of that line is from a song, is the goodness of the Lord, right? So ancestors are present and guiding our work that we're doing as we say yes to it. And in this quarter of my life, I'm almost to the quarter place where I'm looking at what is mine to do in this quarter, in this, what may be, what is likely to be the last quarter. And I say that because I ask myself, am I willing to do whatever may be required to make it 150 years? And every time I ask myself that, I go, yeah, nah, I'm good. You know, I'll go to 100 and do my hoorah and they say that Ernest Holmes sat in a chair and left. I don't know whether that's true or not, but I do know, back to ancestors and relatives, I do know that I have again and again and again, with people that I've sat with as they were making that transition, with people in my own family, experienced the choice in that. And not to go too far out there, but when we're talking about choice, if I can make that kind of choice, then I damn sure can make a choice to create a world in which everyone has the opportunity to thrive. You know, I can choose that.
individually and collectively.
And collectively.
We act like we
Individually,
don't
yes.
understand that we are choosing, especially when people don't imagine themselves as agents for change, or if they are interpreting their spiritual beliefs as I'm just supposed to take care of me. Then right, it's not understanding that then is a choice to separate oneself from what is going on collectively in your own mind, because in reality there is nothing that can be done that separates any of us from the whole.
Amen.
So whatever,
Amen.
right,
Amen.
whatever
Amen.
choices we make, however we show up, we are then choosing what we will put into, what energy we will put into the bigger collective. So, Jacquelyn, when you say, that vision of a world that works for everyone, or create environments where more people can thrive, it's crazy that we think we can separate ourselves and then also improve the collective experience.
It's ignorant, I think. And I'm using ignorant in the very literal term of to ignore, to not know, which kind of goes back to a little bit of that cognitive dissonance, but I'm not wanting to dwell on that. But I am wanting to remind us that when we're faltering, even when my prayer work, my journaling work, my exercise, physically moving the body, that is definitely, absolutely a spiritual practice. My visioning, whatever my spiritual practices, my daily practices may be, this thing, which is one of the things that makes this project that you're doing here, because you have 100 projects and they're all magnificent. This project of poetry, prayer, and practice is a reminder that at any given moment, any place we may be, any circumstance, any condition, that we can jump into that place called prayer, that we can pull up some prayer, from the little mini prayer, God help me, to the deeper prayer of there is just that one life, that one whole, complete, and perfect life. That is the divine, that is Oludumare, that is called by many names, that is a blessing, that is a blessing before, during, and after whatever this thing is that is in front of me. And what I know is that because that is in, through, and as me, because it is the essence of who I am, that thing that I am seeking as solution, as resolution, as clarity, as understanding, that all of that is already given. And so I'm just saying yes to it. I'm saying yes to the way and the ways in which the divine is revealing itself in this thing that I might think is a problem. And so I'm grateful. I'm grateful for the resolution, and I'm grateful for the ways in which, the loving ways in which, the sweet, sweet ways in which the thing itself opens up and reveals the God within that, such that I can remember who and whose I am, and me and it together can do the thing that we're being called for to do, to move into a different way and a different place of being. And I'm deeply and humbly grateful. Deeply and humbly grateful for that, as well as for the opportunity for the remembrance, because sometimes I don't remember, but I'm grateful for this remembrance in this moment, and knowing that in that remembrance, that is already done, it's already given. The answer is just unfolding. And so I'm simply going to let the thing go. I'm going to let this word go to the mutable, perfect, and impeccable law that always, not sometimes. My grandmother said, my God is not a sometimey God, but always, and in always simply says yes. Ashe, amen, I mean, I hope. And then voila, the thing is just like magic. It's just like, and
All right.
that's all the things.
All right,
It's
y'all.
all the
So
things.
you heard me say at the beginning of the show, Jacquelyn is one of the people that when I can't pray for myself or I'm not believing my own prayers, I'm like, okay, I need a prayer. What time are you available? And that's why. You just heard why. It's like that clarity and that understanding of how spiritual law is working is so valuable. So valuable. And the complete faith and the complete belief in that it must deliver. It's like, yeah, it's easy. Sometimes it's easier to believe that for someone else than for ourselves.
Yes,
So we
yes, yes,
support each other.
yes. And I do want to come back to this understanding that of two things. One is that the prayer that we pray is the prayer that has been prayed in some form or another for millennia. That when we talk about African spirituality, we're talking about 7, 8, 9, 10,000 years. So this thing has developed over time. And not only prayer, but the prayer that creates the world that we live in is an evolutionary process, that it is evolving within Centers for Spiritual Living. We talk about, we have a 5-step prayer. We call it spiritual mind treatment. And so I invite us, students in particular, and I love teaching. Teaching is one of my favorite things to do in the whole wide world. But I invite students in particular to open up the textbook where there are hundreds of examples of prayers written by the founder, Ernest Holmes. And we'll see that while there is what we call the recognition that God is all there is, there's the identification, I'm one with that, and there's the declaration of what it is. There's no thanksgiving in that. So that was added. It was evolved into this thing that we call prayer, and there is release. He just says, okay, it's done. And we get to keep evolving this thing called religious science, this thing called science of mind. And I'm saying that because I think this idea of conscious evolution is one that is inherent in this philosophy that is science of mind. And it's a piece that we need to wrap ourselves around to go forward, to, what do I want to say? I'm trying not to say to counter, but to remind ourselves that none of this is set in stone in the way that it does not have room to grow and to expand and to be the tool that we know it to be in our personal lives, to be the tool that it can be in our global lives. Ernest Holmes said very clearly, this is something that is to be built upon. I am not building a thing that's it. That's the end. It's done. Ernest Holmes said, your charge is to continue to grow and to expand this thing. I know that there's stuff that I don't know, but I know that there's stuff to be known.
Yeah, and at least what I think, and this is just like my opinion in this moment, and what doesn't change, right? There is conscious evolution. What doesn't change are the spiritual principles. They're absolute. They are the spiritual laws or the spiritual principles. That's what's absolute. How we understand them, how we apply them,
Mm-hmm.
how we use them to navigate what is going on in the complexity of the world that we live in, that humanity has created. That is what evolves, but not the philosophy, not the principles that the philosophy are built upon. And I think that's where people get confused and use the phrase, oh, but we're supposed to be open at the top. And then they're like throwing in pop psychology or throwing in things that are not based on spiritual principle, but on, just a human idea. And so we have that challenge to face as well. And, this show is on the New Thought Media Network. And so while we're in this moment, kind of breathing in the atmosphere of Centers for Spiritual Living or the teachings of Science of Mind, I have heard and talked with people who are in the unity movement, people who are practicing divine science, people who are in independent New Thought centers and churches. And everybody is saying that same thing. We must evolve in how we teach the principles
Yes.
and
Yes.
how we integrate the principles into the 21st century living conditions.
Yes, yes, yes. Universally, and you and I were both just at the Parliament of World Religions. And again, as you just said, and this is hundreds of different religious and spiritual practices from all over the planet coming together with the understanding, with the idea, with the goal that part of our work as people of spirit, people of God, people of Allah, people of whatever our spiritual inclination may be, that part of our charge is to come from and to work towards the spiritual principles of justice, the spiritual principle of peace, the spiritual principle of love, the spiritual principle of equity, that these are not things that are separate and apart from. It's not Sunday or Saturday, whatever day it is that you do your worship. It's not a Sunday only thing. It's not a Wednesday only, as a friend said who was a guest earlier. She said it's not a Sunday, Wednesday, or whenever you do your thing only, but it is an everyday, hour to hour, moment to moment, 24/7, 365. It's how we walk in the world.
Yes. So there is no smooth segue for this, but it just crossed my mind when I was saying three things that I know about you. One of them was that you are the founder of Platinum Butterfly Ministries. And I didn't say, and you also have served in different spiritual communities, but then you did share that you speak in a lot of different communities. But that still goes back to what is a platinum butterfly? And what is Platinum Butterfly Ministries all about?
Well, as of November 2022, Platinum Butterfly Ministries is also a focus ministry of Centers for Spiritual Living. And what it means is that there is the muscle, the strength of platinum with the ease and the beauty and the delicateness of the butterfly, because the butterfly is an entity that has surrendered in a way that I don't know there's any other experience or expression on the planet that has surrendered in that way. I was very familiar with the cocoon process, as we all are, but I have to tell you, when I found out that what happens in that cocoon is liquefaction, the caterpillar becomes liquid. Now you talk about faith, you talk about trust, right? The thing becomes liquid before it reconstructs as the butterfly. And that is like, I don't know, surrender to the nth degree. Where the name came from is I was in a graduate class, and it was a class on change, organizational change. I have a master's in organizational change. And the assignment was to come up with a name for yourself that would capture how you see yourself in the world and who you are. And at the time, I wasn't that long out of being a machinist, which is just one of the other areas that I've had the opportunity to express in over the years. And what I learned as a machinist at that time, platinum was one of the strongest elements, strongest metals, if you will, that had been discovered to that point. There have since been, I want to say, at least 3 additional metal elements that have been added to the periodic chart, but I'm not going to delve into that. But platinum was like the top of the line at that time. And so I wanted that strength because I feel like strength is the thing that is the undergirding of my personal how I got over story, as well as a collective how I got over story. And circling all the way back to earlier in the conversation, you have to come with a more open heart and a way of being receptive. And there is something in the softness that's required there. There's a need to be flexible, like the butterfly wings. And then finally, and thirdly, and this also came along later, is the idea, and this was another aha moment. I did not know, I'm telling myself, I did not know that butterflies were pollinators until I was talking to a sister friend, and she said, "Oh yes, oh you're a pollinator, huh?" And that is how my tagline, pollinating the spiritual nature of individuals, groups, and organizations, came about. So those 3 pieces, the strength, the softness, the flight too, the ability to lightly move from one place to the other in a way that's like doing a dance, and pollinating the spiritual nature. Because very early on, I believed that everybody has a spiritual nature, whether we call it the Christ consciousness, whether we call it the God within, whether we call it that thing that connects all of us, that thread that unites all of us, that everyone has a spiritual nature. I'm not, I'll say it this way. Some of the most spiritual people I have ever met call themselves and are atheists of varying degrees. I myself was an agnostic on a good day. There was a place in my life when I was right there. So one of the things about this work that is mine to do, Platinum Butterfly Ministries, is being available to everyone, the kind of come as you are and bring who you are, because everybody has something to contribute. And hopefully what I can help you discover is how you take that gift that you have and share it with all of us, because you are important. Every one of us is important and vital. I like to say, if you're on the planet right now, you got a job to do. So
every one of us, every one of
us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whew, so Anything that comes to mind for you if you were going to give someone encouragement to integrate spiritual practice into their life, what might you say to them? We've got about 5 or 6 minutes remaining in the show. And for whatever reason, it's like, oh, poetry prayer practice. What would you say to people about either the benefits or the reasons or the how to related to integrating spiritual practices into your life?
So, and this is literally coming up in this moment. I think we all have spiritual practices in our lives. We just may not be using that terminology. What did come up was, what do you love? What is it that just rocks your world? What is it that just makes you smile? I have a friend who loves fishing, loves it. It's like his happy place all the time. Well, I got a headache. I'm going fishing. My life is crazy right now. I'm going fishing. One of my kids is doing something interesting. I'm going fishing. That is his spiritual practice. And so in the conversation about it, what we get to do is, first of all, recognize it as a spiritual practice, and then look at how can we, once we recognize it as a spiritual practice, be more conscious about how we practice. Be more aware. Smell the roses is one of the things, we have as a colloquialism. How can we, in whatever the thing is that I'm doing that I love to do, and artists are so clear. They'll tell you, when I'm painting, I'm in a zone, and I'm calling that spiritual practice. I'm calling that being in, because spiritual practice is what puts us in connection and contact with the divine. And when we hear what people are saying and we compare that to what the mystics say is a spiritual experience, well, la-di-da, and look at that. It looks so, wait, could it be that this is that and that is this? Is that a possibility? So that's what I would say. Start where you are. Start with what it is that you're doing and recognize it, because as we recognize it, we give it it was Mao Zedong said, we give it plan, conscious character. And as we give it plan, conscious character, we're growing it. And growing it is that piece of, if you take the first step, God will do the rest. So once we just acknowledge that, then some other things just start to happen, start to flow. And then we get to have people like Dr. Tracy Brown, like Jacquelyn Edwards, like all of these folks who are saying, how can I serve? How can I help you? How can I help you with this path? And that's where we get to pray for each other. But even before we pray for each other, we get to be an affirmation and confirmation of and for each other. And we're building the freedom, we're creating the justice, we're creating the equity through our acknowledging and using practice. There's poetry, prayer, and practice. Through our spiritual practice, we're building those muscles that allow us to not just walk on fire, but walk through the fire and get to the other side, and then turn around and blow it out. Just you're done.
Yes, and yes. And I'm sure that you'll be on someone else's show at some point, and instead of talking about your friend who loves fishing and making fishing into a spiritual practice, I won't be surprised to hear through the grapevine that you were on somebody else's show talking about, yeah, I have this friend and she uses roller skating as a
Yes,
spiritual
Lord. Yes. Yes, I'm going to say that right now. It won't be on somebody else's
had a
show. You
stressful
know,
day, let's go roller skating.
the
Need to,
queen of the
need to
roller.
clear your brain, go roller skating.
Go
Right?
roller skating. Go roller skating. Actually, I think that there's at some point going to be the Dr. Tracy Brown roller skating rink. Now, whether that will be in Dallas or some other part of the world, I am fairly certain that that is a thing that is going to happen. So that's how I feel about that.
Well, I
Thank you.
a few years ago, one of the most successful workshops that I was doing for different
Mhm.
communities was the one on 5 minute spiritual practices and helping people see the things that they are already doing that they can do in 5 minutes or less that actually is spiritual practice if you engage in it in that way. So maybe
Consciously,
it may
consciously,
be time
consciously.
to bring that back and you know and actually give people a template for how they can find and create those spiritual practices that are so personalized for them that it ensures they go deeper.
Ashe, Ashe. Do I have a minute?
Yes.
So I did something very uncharacteristic. I actually came on an hour earlier and I was like, why is what the and then it was like, you're an hour early. And so this came up for me. in the, she's making that face, y'all, because that's not who I am. I'm not the early bird, but I'm gonna leave that at that. Our prayers are our deep, divine, and intimate connection with all that was, is, and ever will be. Our prayers are our remembrance of who and whose we are, steeped in ancestral traditions, renditions, and predilections, and tingling, exploding with all that we are becoming. Becoming from the threads, from the strands, from the ropes, from the cables of our being aware of who we are, being with self, with each other, with community, with nation, with planet. In, through, and as our prayers, we consciously, creatively, and confidently expand, express, and envelop a world, a life, an expression, and experiences founded, grounded, and exponentially expressed as absolute, unconditional love, gratitude, and grace. And so it is.
Wow, that is beautiful. And we're on 4 different channels at the same time, and we've had people throughout who have said hello. But Linda shared that fishing is her husband's spiritual practice, and Dana is on Team Tracy. Roller skating's great for getting grounded somatically, and it is. So thank you, Jacquelyn,
Thank you.
for being with me today. If anyone who's watching live or the recording, if you want to stay in touch, you can visit Platinum Butterfly Ministries on Facebook, and the link is showing there. And Jacquelyn, thanks so much. I just really
Thank
appreciate
you.
you saying yes.
I appreciate the ask and excited. And I'm just from the heart, humbly grateful for the work that you're doing and being in the world.
Mm,
Very, 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 very grateful. Thank
thank
you. And
you
thank you for
so much.
inviting me to be a part of it. Yay.
Thanks,
Thank
and we'll
you.
talk soon.
Yes, ma'am.
So, everybody, just keep in mind that you can join me and whoever my guest is every Tuesday. And there are some Tuesdays where I don't have a guest and we just dive into spiritual practice together. But I do want to share with you who's coming up in the next few weeks. So next week, I'll be chatting with Reverend Jeffrey Ryan, and I am pretty sure we're going to take a deep dive on visioning as a spiritual practice. Then Dr. Casey Wilson, and we may talk a little bit about Camp Cedar Ridge, but we're especially going to talk about labyrinths and other spiritual practices. And then with Dr. Raina Putter at the end of the month, we'll close out with some end of October spiritual information, or information you might want to know about different spiritual traditions at the end of October. So those are the guests coming up, but they're not more important than you. So please join me every Tuesday at noon Mountain Time. Bring your friends, share the link, and I will see you again soon.
Thanks for watching. Join us again next week, or watch on demand at www.ntmedia.org or youtube.com/New Thought Media Network. New Thought Media Network, positively inspiring. Learn more at www.ntmedia.org.